Thank you everyone who is joining us tonight so that we are going to have a discussion about the Thurston Pond and the stormwater repairs that are needed. I'm Liz Margolis. I'm the Executive Director for Student and School Safety for the Ann Arbor Public Schools. And I'm going to just take a second here to say that personally, I am a child of the Thurston Pond and the Thurston Nature Center. I grew up right on Prairie Street, spent many wonderful summers and winters around the pond. So I know how important that nature center and the pond is to not just our neighbors, but also to our entire community. Joining me tonight is Emil Lozana, who's our Executive Director of Capital Projects, as well as Wade Rose, who's the Water Resource Specialist at OHM Advisors, who are working with us on this project. Tonight, we are going to be giving you a project overview. We're going to talk about the outcomes and then, of course, the project details. We're also going to talk about a floristic quality survey, which is about the flowers and the nature on their survey we've done on the site, as well as the nature trails closures that are going to have to occur during the reconstruction time, and then what our next steps will be. And I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Lozana right now, and he's going to go into our highlights.
Great, thank you, Ms. Margolis. Good evening, everyone. As a overview, in this image, you'll see the Thurston Pond on the top of your page. You just see the little edge of the school building to the south. And this pond is serviced by a catch basin number 1, which serves as an overflow piece of infrastructure. So if the pond level rises too high, it overflows into catch basin number 1. It then flows about 200 feet underground in this 18-inch storm sewer to catch basin number 2, where it then connects to the city of Ann Arbor stormwater infrastructure. So again, if the pond gets too high, it flows into catch basin number 1, goes underground to catch basin number 2, and then out to the city stormwater infrastructure. Unfortunately, our investigation has determined that there is a significant failure in the underground stormwater pipe, and this has caused water to infiltrate from the pond, not through catch basin number 1, but through other channels that it is bored underground to this pipe, causing the need for the repair. You'll also see in dashed yellow here at the sort of Prairie Street prairie here, this is the area that we'll need to use for our staging for this repair work. But I'll go a little more into detail on the background of our investigation and the repair scope and timeline. So we did observe 2 structural defects in the stormwater outlet system. The 18-inch pipe has a failure starting about 60 feet to the downstream side from the pond. And this is the pipe that does connect to the stormwater system of the city of Ann Arbor. Also, the embankment, that's the area around catch basin number 1, has been undermined significantly, and stormwater is free flowing under the embankment and connecting with the broken pipe underground. These defects need to be repaired quickly. It's a significant risk, if this repair is not effected, of future flooding and more damage to the infrastructure. The repair will require an excavation approximately 10 feet wide and about 40 feet long in the woods over that stormwater line. And in order to effectively and safely make the repair, the pond level will need to be lowered so that when we dig the hole, there's as little water as we can possibly get in the excavation so that we can make a good repair. We did do a significant investigation. When our engineering partners first arrived, there was little or no water flowing into catch basin number 1 on the upstream side. However, there was a lot of water flowing out through catch basin number 2 on the downstream side. With this kind of anomaly, which you would expect if there's water not flowing in the upstream side, you would not see water in the downstream side. We contracted for some video inspection of the pipe. After about 67 feet coming downstream from catch basin number 1. The pipe was 100% full of water and the camera could not continue. Coming from the other side, from the catch basin number 2 going upstream at about 114 feet, we encountered the same condition of the pipe full of water. We also did a dye test. It's a pretty common way to see where infrastructure is going. They inserted the dye at catch basin number 1, but the dye did not appear in catch basin number 2. These results of these investigations indicated that there is a structural failure in the pipe somewhere around 70 feet from catch basin number 1 going downstream. I just have a couple pictures of that. You can see the upper left, that's the camera view at 67 feet downstream from catch basin number 1. And in the bottom right, that's the investigation that occurred from catch basin number 2 going upstream. And again, the pipe is 100% full of water, whereas in other portions, the pipe was not full of water. And so these are just some of the drawings. You can see at the top of the drawing, this is the pond valve, and the catch basin number 1, that overflow catch basin. And this elliptical blue area is the failure area that needs to be excavated and repaired. And this area indicated in green is that laydown or the staging area in the prairie to the south. You also can see this 12-inch water main, which was installed 2 summers ago, is also in this area, but we've determined that that excavation is not related to this failure in the stormwater system. This is just another view of that, indicating we're going to do some exploratory digging just to make sure we have our pipe elevations correct. These kind of stormwater pipes have a very slight downward grade to them, and we want to, as part of this work, identify where those elevation points are in the pipe so that as we install the new pipe, we're hitting those marks and we have a good flow of water downstream. We realize there are a lot of very special plants in the prairie and in the wooded area that unfortunately needs to get disturbed to make this repair. And so we engaged our partners at OHM Advisors. Wade Rose is here today, as well as his partner, John Deslepi, completed a floristic quality inventory. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Rose to walk you through that and to talk a little bit about some of the legal requirements around these types of plants.
Thanks, Emil. So again, my name is Wade Rose. I'm a water resource specialist and field ecologist for OHM Advisors. I've been working in landscape and forestry for over 25 years, with the last, I'd say, decade or so, specifically focused on native plants. So this is kind of really the meat and potatoes of what I do. So on July 19th, we were asked to come out and do a floristic quality assessment within the areas of impact for the stormwater pipe repairs. We broke the quality assessment into 4 distinct regions. These are outlined in yellow, blue, orange, and pink. Our first area is called Station 0+25. This is based off of the survey stationing that was provided to us. This area was very typical of what we find in wooded urban environments, quite a few invasive species, with a smattering of some lower quality native plant material. So the average score within this area for the coefficient of conservatism, which is a designation that we give plants based on their likelihood of growing in a disturbed site. This had a low floristic quality, or C value, which was less than 5. So not a whole lot of high quality plants in this area. Mostly, again, it was invasive species, buckthorn, honeysuckle, things of that nature. Our second area, outlined here in blue, was designated as medium floristic quality. Again, this was kind of a transitional zone between the highly impacted and dominated by invasive species into a slight increase in our native species, with one standing out in particular, Jack in the Pulpit, with a C value of 5. Moving further, again, away from the pond, we had another medium floristic quality, but we had a few more high scoring plants in this area. Spikenard, spicebush, jack in the pulpit, common trillium, bloodroot, and wild ginger were fairly dominant within this area. And then lastly, the area in pink, which is classified as upland prairie, which is our high floristic quality area. Here we found 2 species with a C value of 10, and then again, C6 and C5. So looking at rosinweed, purple coneflower, prairie dock, golden Alexander, cutleaf coneflower, stiff goldenrod, and smooth aster. It should be noted that within this area, there is 1 species, rosinweed, Silphium integrifolium, that has a C value of C10, and it is classified as an S2 species in the state. So S2 is designated as a potentially threatened or imperiled species in the state. However, though that designation is only given to historic populations of those plants. So we did some research on this particular area, and we discovered that this area was greatly disturbed previously, and that all of the plants that we found in the upland prairie area were a result of the overseeding and reestablishment of that prairie area that occurred after the construction. So on the state and federal level, there are a few laws that we have in place in order to protect plants, to ensure that we're not harvesting, selling, things of that nature. So in the state of Michigan, we have the Natural Resource and Environmental Protection Act, which was established in 1994, which basically states that we shall not take, possess, transport, import, export any of our native species, plants, fish, wildlife, anything of that nature. In this case, we're not proposing, taking and selling any of these species. However, if there was a group that wanted to volunteer their time to then transplant these plants into a different area outside of the area of impact, that's definitely something that would be considered. On the federal level, we have the Endangered Species Act of 1973. Again, this is in reference to actively taking plants out of the natural environment and selling them commercially. And then finally, the Lacey Act of 1990, which basically is the same language as the state of Michigan, right? So we're not taking, selling, exporting, importing any of these plants. We're only proposing that if someone wished to transplant them within the natural area, that is something that could be done.
Thank you, Wade. And so this map and this entire presentation will be posted on the website, and we'll make this map available to people. But this is our current thinking regarding, safety is an important consideration in this. There will be heavy equipment involved with this. There will be a significant excavation with a big hole for some period of time. And so we do need to close some of the trails to keep foot traffic out of the area of work with the heavy equipment and the construction activities. So the areas indicated in red, those are points at which trails will be closed during the entire time of construction. Areas indicated with yellows will be temporarily closed, especially during the site preparation time of this project. Again, this will be posted on the website and be available for people. To be noted, I know it's people like to sort of walk the loop, if you will, around the pond. Unfortunately, that's not going to be something that's very feasible during this time frame due to the proximity of some of this work to the pond itself and the loop trail, if you will. So with that, I'll go on to some next steps. We did mention previously the need to lower the water level in the pond. We've already commenced that. We did get some significant rains, but we will continue with that to get to a level that it's safe and effective to effect the repair. We have selected a contractor, ASI Inc. They are currently helping us with some other projects in the school district, and they have the equipment and the people power available to do this for us on relatively short notice. We're here today with our community update. Beginning next week, we will begin closing trails, and the contractor will begin work. And we anticipate the work to be completed by the end of August. And we will work with the Thurston Nature Center group and others in September and October to effect site restoration, very similar to the partnership that we had when we did the water main work a couple of summers ago. And we will be providing regular weekly updates to the Thurston Nature Center group and posted on the website so that people are informed with project progress and any changes to the timeline. So I think that's our last slide. So I believe Andrew, Mr. Cluley, has opened up a question and answer function. So if there are any questions that people have, feel free to type those into the question function and Mr. Cluley will convey those to us.
That's right. You can ask any of your questions. Type it in bottom row. There's a Q&A bar. If you haven't used Zoom before, you just click on that and you can type in your question. We do have one already that we've received. Would it be possible to have a copy of this presentation so we could put it on the Thurston Nature Center website?
Yes, absolutely. And I will, I've been communicating with Ms. Moorhead, Elizabeth Moorhead, throughout this process, and I'll be sure to, once we're done here tonight, I'll be sure to send her the presentation and she can post it on the website.
I'll add that in addition to on their website, we'll go ahead and put this presentation and the video of this meeting will both go up on the webpage on the Ann Arbor Public Schools page. Our next question is, how does the pond draining mechanism work if the catch basin is broken?
Yes, that's a great question. And there is a secondary overflow device. There's a primary overflow that is not functioning. The secondary overflow device is what we're utilizing. It does go into the same pipe, but it bypasses catch basin number one essentially. So we're able to drain it in that way.
The next question is, would Mr. Rose identify areas in the Nature Center where plants can be moved to, I believe?
Yes, I'd be more than happy in order to come out and identify is for both the upland prairie and the woodland plants as well as tag any of the ones that we found during the quality assessment for transplant.
Yeah, and we are unfortunately on a tight timeline here, and so you know, I'll speak with Ms. Moorhead, but we really do need to begin this work next week, and the first phase is clearing some of the underbrush, and so if we can mobilize folks quickly, you know, this weekend, that's really what needs to happen in order to complete this in time for school. We also have the restoration side of this where the district is committing to provide resources, financial resources for the purchase of additional seeds and plants to bring this place back to its former state.
Okay, I think we've got a follow-up question. Could we replant some of the removed plants in September and October if there's a way to hang on to them until then? So I think basically they're asking, could we put them right back in the same area and just hold them somewhere in the meantime?
Yep, so you can basically what they call heal these plants into a space. So you can do this using either mulch or digging a trench and then placing the root systems of those plants into those areas, and then just making sure that they stay watered. I would recommend that all the flowers and the majority of the foliage is cut back, so it's just the root mass, so the root mass can begin to heal in. But that is definitely something that you can do. I would recommend, you know, identifying different areas that these plants could be transplanted in, just in case in the future there needs to be more excavation work that occurs within this area, that we don't have to continually move these plants back and forth, as well as harvesting the seed from these plants for future use as well.
Mm-hmm.
The next question, will the culverts get reset to have the wood side lower than the pond side?
No, the catch basins need to be set at the elevations they are so that we get the flow from the pond down to the city's stormwater system. I I think that was the question, like, would we raise catch basin number 1 or lower 1 and raise 2? We need to keep them where they are in order to get to have the overflow mechanism working. I hope that answers the question.
And if it doesn't, they can, oh, no, they weren't asking about the catch basin. They were asking specifically about the culverts, Mr. Latsana.
I guess I'm not clear what culverts were referring to.
We can, I will take the individual's name down and maybe we can follow up offline
Sure.
in the future on that one. What is the reason for putting equipment in the prairie area? The adjacent turf grass on the playground is much easier to replant.
Yeah, that's a good question. In order to get, we did look at coming other ways. It just is not really feasible for us to get the size of equipment into that area without disturbing the prairie. And so unfortunately, that's not a place, that is our access point to the northern part of this site. And I know it's a prairie and we restored it, but to be honest, it is the one and only access point that we have to affect any kind of repair on the pond or the northern portion of this site. There's not really a better option. We did look at coming in from the school side and determined that that was not a feasible option with the size of equipment and the material that we need to get in.
Okay. Next question. Did the Floristic study note the presence of crown vetch, purple loosestrife, bird's foot trefoil, and other serious invaders that were brought in during the waterline project 3 years ago? Equipment must be washed to remove seeds before coming into the area.
So the Floristic Quality Assessment did note quite a few non-native species. But again, these are species that, they migrate into natural spaces fairly regularly. So it's not necessarily, coming in on equipment, things like that. It could be as simple as someone mowing their lawn and casting those seeds into the general area. For the future reestablishment, I would definitely recommend, a maintenance plan moving forward and monitoring for sure of the site.
Next question. The existing culverts were supposed to naturally overflow into the woods. They do not currently work because it runs uphill. Will it be fixed during this project?
Yeah, thank you. I have clarification. I understand what the culvert question is. And we did research that quite extensively when the culvert issue was first brought to our attention, I think about 1.5 years ago. And based on our reading of the engineered drawings that were completed during the last time the pond underwent significant upgrades, those culverts are, to my knowledge, and I'll double check with our folks, but to my recollection, it appears that they're actually set as they were designed by the engineers. I realize it's counterintuitive, but the way that they're currently set is what was on the engineered set that when this whole pond was updated a number of years ago and additional capacity was brought in and to alleviate some downstream flooding, that those are actually set the way that they were intended. But we'll certainly look into that some more and report back.
We have a follow-up about the prairie, asking if it'd be possible to stage on the school grounds area grass and then simply use the prairie, understanding that has to be driven through on the way in. Yeah,
we've looked at this. There's a shed in that area that limits our ability to enter, as well as it's closer to the road. The further we go from that road entrance, the more disruptive we're going to be. And this is not small equipment. And in particular, our concern is if it does rain again and the ground becomes saturated, our equipment could potentially get stuck in the fields behind the school. And so we need to be as close to the road with the equipment as possible, given the potential for equipment to essentially get stuck in the mud out there in the field.
Okay. We can take a few more questions. If you have any other questions, please go ahead and just type them into the Q&A button at the bottom. The next question, how much damage will be done in the prairie? Will a large area be cleared?
The answer is yes, it will be significantly disturbed. We did look at, minimizing that to the extent possible, but again, we understand the desire to have a native prairie and we fully support that, but it is in the location where our only access to affect any kind of repair or do any sort of significant work with equipment in the pond is through that entrance. And so it's something that unfortunately is unavoidable.
Okay. We have any other questions? Please go ahead and enter them at this time. This appears to be more of a statement than a question, but there is concern that the stewards are not totally available in the restoration time period, and wondering about working with a restoration professional as soon as possible.
So Mr. Rose is available to help facilitate the work. But again, if this problem were to become exacerbated, let's say we have additional heavy rains and there's further collapse of this pipe, we could literally see this pond overflowing into people's backyards and the complete destruction of that underground infrastructure, at which point the excavation would not be 10 feet, give or take, by 40 or 50 feet. The excavation could be the entire 250 feet of this pipe. So while we understand the compressed timeline, we are also operating in the best interest, we believe, of protecting not only the district's property, but adjacent property owners from flooding and other issues that could result from not having a way to drain the pond in the event of heavy rains, which unfortunately we seem to be seeing a lot of those in the last couple of months.
And I think he's actually talking about the restoration at the end of the project, making sure that we get it as good as we can afterwards.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're in a tight timeline right now, but we're looking at September and October as a time that we can dedicate significant resources. And if we need additional sort of people power to dig and move things, we can certainly provide that and supplement whatever local nature center resources are available.
And I would like to add to, during those months, September and October, those would be, ideal months that we would, undertake the restoration process as well.
Yep.
Okay. That is all the questions I am seeing at this time. A reminder that on the website that we do have the ability for you to review this presentation. We'll have the video posted there, and you also can ask other questions if other items come up. Oh, I guess one quick one. Can we plan the restoration in the next month?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll email Ms. Moorhead this presentation tonight, and I'll be sure to have a conversation with her about how best to plan for that in the next couple of days.
Right. One last quick question. Someone's asking for the contact information for Mr. Rose.
It'd be best. My email is available on the postcard that was sent out, and will be on the AAPS website. It's probably best to come, send questions to me, and I'll get them, whether it's to Mr. Rose or other professionals that we have involved in this project. I can make sure that questions go to the right people. that would probably be just a single point of contact, just to make sure it gets the attention it deserves.
That makes sense. And I guess we do have one other last question before we end this presentation. And I guess it's probably some ways the most important question. Do we know what caused this problem?
Yeah, that's the $10,000 question. You know, we do not know what has caused this, but it has likely been happening for a little bit of time, but it's gotten to the point where the overflow in catch basin 1 is basically not functioning at all, and everything is flowing around that through subterranean channels. You know, this infrastructure is pretty old, and things happen over time. This is not the only stormwater pipe that we've repaired in the district this summer. It seems that our stormwater infrastructure in the city and the region is under a high level of strain. And with, you know, these 100, you know, you think of 100-year rain, and I think I'm not going to say the exact number, but in the last 10 years, we've had our fair share of 100-year and even 500-year rains. I think this is putting stress on not only this stormwater infrastructure, but a lot of other places. And so it could be that not only was the infrastructure in full use, in other words, the pipe flowing a full amount of water, but the ground surrounding it was also saturated due to excessive rain events, and that could have caused some of the destabilization. Really, it just takes a small separation in one of these pipes to start something like this, and then it just grows over time until you get to a condition like we have today.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Latsana, Mr. Wade, and Ms. Margolis for sharing this important information and letting the community know a little bit more about the repair work that's coming up next week, starting next week at the Thurston Nature Area.